A bridge develops from Wei-Ling Tei's earlier project, The Other Shore. For that, she explored mainlander identity by interviewing and creating portraits of a group of young students, professionals, whose studies, work opportunities, sometimes family migrations had brought them from different parts of mainland China to Hong Kong. She wanted to sort of complicate the image of so-called mainlanders at that time. But in the process, she also became interested in earlier generations of migration, and that was the beginning, really, of her research process for A Bridge. She started to interview this older generation, often the parents or grandparents of people who would identify as Hong Kongers today, and to hear their stories of migration. And in the process, she also became interested in the border and the way that this border that had defined, in some ways, a space of danger, but also opportunity, defining Hong Kong vis-a-vis China, is also being eclipsed by more recent and contemporary developments, including in the realm of infrastructure, with the high-speed train, of course, but also the new Hong Kong-Zhuhai Bridge, which had just opened as the research for this project was beginning in late 2018. So the installation, the video installation that, around which much of the exhibition orbits, this installation is a 30-minute loop that Wei-Ling shot traveling along the bridge from Hong Kong, and there's a sense of monumentality around the infrastructure, and yet it feels empty because at the time, of course, it had just opened. There's not a lot of traffic. The bus continues on to a horizon that doesn't arrive, and there's a sense of ambivalence around this loss of a sense of direction. On the other hand, the audio in the video is of Mandarin and Cantonese voices, families, children. You can hear people eating, and that brings it back to the everyday, to the here and now, the present. And there's, I think, a tension there that permeates the other work in the exhibition as well. This sense of a resistance from the present to either nostalgia or a kind of staying in the past. So alongside this video installation is one of the key series, the C-type photographic prints. In this image in particular, you can see a lot of the process that's underlying these C-type prints, and that is that Wei-Ling has really shot these by manipulating them as objects, as artifacts, rather than just images. So in this image, for example, you can see a reflection on the image surface, which is Wei-Ling holding her mobile phone. In fact, all this series of C-type prints has been made by using her mobile phone to rephotograph images she made as a professional photographer when she was living and working in Hong Kong between 1999 and 2015. Some of the images are everyday images, like this one around the area where she lived, often around North Point, sometimes at Causeway Bay. And other images are things that she had shot on assignment for major magazines and media outlets at the time. In this image, you see a reflection of her hand holding the mobile phone, and you can also see image on the slide. This is a slide that's sitting on a light box. You can see that it's slightly bent. It's really photographed as an object. On the other hand, this digital image is then printed as a C-type print, which is a classic art photography print, and it's a highly reflective, fragile surface. And so you can see yourself reflected in the actual work, as well as the other artworks, including the video installation, for example, and other artworks around this particular image object. In other images from this series of C-type prints, you also might recognize, or you think you recognize, certain gestures or images that seem now somewhat iconic. So there's a boy, for example, putting a mask on at the beach, in this case at Repulse Bay. It's actually an image from Hong Kong emerging out of SARS that Wei-Ling shot on assignment in 2003, which we might recognize through our experience of the COVID-19 pandemic today. Similarly, there are images of crowds. Some of them are crowds from the protests in 2003 against Article 23, which today seem to be much more current or recent, of course, because of the recent history of protest in Hong Kong. And so there's a kind of a tension here as to what images, the capacity of photography to really carry messages between the past and the present. And in that sense, that takes us perhaps to this, the third key part of the exhibition is one series which was made by taking 1 second of video and producing 25 individual prints, breaking that second of video into 25 frames to reflect the PAL video format. The video itself was actually made while Wei-Ling was on a subsequent research trip in 2019, and of course the public demonstrations and protests had erupted at that time, and like many, she was sitting in a friend's apartment watching the live streaming on TV, and wanted to somehow capture or pause that to consider as a sort of counterpoint, to consider what this high circulation, this saturation of images actually means. And so here she's taking a time-based medium and making it into a space that you have to move between to create this sense of montage and trying to make sense of the individual images. And like the horizon that never arrives in the looping video installation, perhaps, nevertheless, it's never entirely clear what's happening between each of these individual split seconds of the live stream. For WMA, on this occasion, she's also made, Wei-Ling's made a brand new work, which is a sound installation that brings back some of the original audio interviews with people who had migrated to Hong Kong.
OK 啦，有絲色扣鈕咁樣攝住個牛仔褲，穿埋皮底，覺得都幾時髦啦咁樣，點知？
And what's interesting here, I think, is the way that she's layered fragments of these interviews to create a kind of meta-narrative, recognizing the resonance in the different experiences that they had, similar in some ways to the way that she has processed and manipulated the visual elements that go into the C-type print series.